I had a little technical difficulty. My super producer is not on tonight. Therefore, I have to do all of this technical stuff on my own. So I do apologize. And I do beg your indulgence and just bear with me while I get my information that I want to share. Like I was saying, I want to talk about the state legislature. So 2021, all state positions are up for election. And I wanted to make sure that everybody knows what the senators and the assembly members are doing or not doing. So it's just going to be you and I, and we're going to have a real talk about things that I think are really important. Talk about a couple of bills that I've been following. But before I do that, let's just talk about this. So I took the liberty of reviewing the 2020-21 list of bills to see how far the state legislature have progressed since last year. And I'm disappointed that they have not passed more meaningful legislation. I was not surprised that the bill to legalize, the bill for the legalization referendum that the state legislature gave to all of the Jersey people to confuse them into voting to legalize recreational cannabis has not yet been signed by the governor. So listen, weed is not legal yet, people. The bill, with its amendments, interesting as they were, was passed by both houses and sat on the governor's desk. He refused to sign it, and the politrickers sent what was dubbed as a cleanup bill to appease him to no avail. So at issue was the punishment for underage possession and consumption of cannabis. I should also state that the commission that is supposed to oversee the new market has not even been fully appointed, and that was confirmed on Tuesday by the Legislative District Office 22. So the A21, of course, was, the legalized marijuana. After the voters voted 2-1 in the state of New Jersey to legalize recreational use for folks 21 and older, the state legislature hadn't even had anything in draft, right? So then they want to hem and haw, go back and forth, and it was supposed to be a constitutional amendment as of January 1st. However, it's January the 14th as I speak, and nothing is there. So let's talk about what was in the cleanup bill, which was never even voted on, or the governor didn't even want to be bothered with it. In the cleanup bill, it was the bill's benefits, or shall I say highlights, would have been 70% of the tax and 100% of the social justice excise fee on cultivators would have gone to impact zones. Okay. Cities and towns that chose to allow cannabis retail would collect a 2% tax and retain that revenue. All right. There will be business incentives for minorities and women and disabled veterans to help them participate in the industry. No one has yet to say what the cost will be to obtain one of these 6 licenses or the handler certification. We keep hearing how there will be incentive for women, minorities, and disabled vets, but not how much the investment must be. I'm hoping that this is not going to be a cluster, pretending that we want to allow full inclusion into the industry, all the while shutting folks out due to the overwhelming and exorbitant expense to start up. So be clear, $500 on the street can be a startup of a weed empire. I'm just saying. So the cleanup bill, let's see, would have provided, this is what they were going to put into the bill. This is what was not in the original legislation. Anyone who was 18 or 20 in possession of cannabis in a school, motor vehicle, or public place would be fined. Anyone between the ages of 18 and 20 who possesses marijuana or cannabis, knowingly consuming it in any school, motor vehicle, or public place will be fined. Minors under the age of 18 in possession of marijuana, cannabis, would not be subject to a civil penalty. They would be subject to a curbside warning or station house adjustment, allowing for law enforcement agencies to resolve the matter or go to like a drug treatment education program. So that's what was in the cleanup bill, and that's what your governor did not sign. So my thoughts are the penalty for cannabis should be the same for underage drinking, period, point blank. And the cleanup bill should have addressed home grow for personal consumption. I mean, if you're going to go back and write stuff in and fill it in, you might as well allow for someone who wants to grow their own marijuana, who doesn't want it to be treated and have to go through, the facilities and whatnot. Grow it like they would grow their basil or their tomatoes, for God's sake. Just saying. Get it together, Jersey. Folks are watching. I don't know, but we got to just be clear in New Jersey. Let me see. Again, my super producer is not here, so bear with me. Just trying to get all my information together. Let me see. Now, everybody knows I didn't support the legalization of marijuana. And the reason I didn't support the legalization of marijuana is because I knew that the legislatures had not thought this out, they were not prepared, and that there was going to be a disparity when it came to who was going to be, in this cannabis, if you will, right? But there is legislation that I am supporting and I'm following closely. The first one that I want to talk about is an assembly bill number 305. Bill number 305 was sponsored by Assemblyman Joe Danielson from District 17. It was introduced on the 14th of 2020 in January, and it was assigned to the Law and Public Safety Committee. I'm going to read the statement. I really do like this. Basically, it's increasing. The bill enhances the penalties for falsely incriminating another person in criminal activity. Under current law, a person who knowingly gives or causes to be given false information to a law enforcement officer in order to implicate another commits false implication of crime in the fourth degree. Fourth degree crimes are punishable by 18 months imprisonment and a fine of up to $10,000. The bill upgrades false incrimination to a crime in the third degree and increases the fines to $15,000. Yep, and 5 years in prison. I like this one. I really hope that we see this one come through and move all the way up and get approved. This is important. And it's for all you Karens and Peters out there. Watch what you say. Stop blaming folks for stuff they didn't do. Or that malicious prosecution is no longer going to be tolerated. Okay, people? Knock it off. All right, so we talked about one that was hinky, the legal marijuana, and we talked about one that I really like. And let's talk about another bill that is going through the state legislature that, let's see, I don't like. Let me just say, this bill is sponsored by 2 Republicans, and as everyone knows, I'm not really, hard pressed on party affiliation. It's not a big deal. We agree on some things and we don't. However, what's important to note here is that it's sponsored by 2 Republicans. The committee is 4 Democrats and 2 Republicans, but they're all men. Interesting. So what bill is this? This is Assembly Bill 134, sponsored by Assemblyman Parker Space, LD 24, and sponsored by Harold Worths, LD 24. This bill that was introduced and was sent over to the State and Local Government Committee, which actually they have no schedule of their committee meetings as of today, because I checked because I wanted to see if this bill was on their list of items to be discussed. But they don't even have a schedule yet. Oh, well. Anyway, so this bill requires certain documentation as proof of voter identity to vote. Updates procedures for challenging voters regarding proof of identity. Have you all ever been challenged when you went to vote? Have you been challenged when you went to vote ever before? We know here in Linden, there's always the saying that folks show up and move into Linden when it's time to vote. And that might be true in some wards. I mean, I'm just saying. But I still think that requiring voters to vote and provide identification is 100 steps backward, right? So I'm going to just flip through some of the things that I found interesting. And also, so are you telling me these people who sponsored this bill and the committee, hopefully, someone will get a whiff of this. You're telling me now that my signature, when I go there and I see the same polling people who have been there for year after year, they know who you are, they know your signature, and now I have to produce a state-issued government ID, or I have to submit an affidavit that says that I don't have a photo ID because of religious reasons, and therefore I would be required to provide something like a utility bill or something else that would prove my identity. I don't understand. So in the amendment I'm looking at, it says, in addition to the display of documentation as may be required, beginning with the first election in January, regardless of when the voter registered and the method of registration, voters shall not be permitted to vote unless otherwise exempt pursuant to subsection only by displaying a document of valid proof of identification, which may be New Jersey driving licenses, New Jersey non-driver's identification, or other document that includes all of the following criteria. And that criteria would be the name of the voter, whom the document was issued to, which conforms to the name under which the voter is registered, and a photograph of the voter, an expiration date. So let me say that not everyone drives, and not everyone will go to the motor vehicles because the Motor Vehicles Commission is horrible. Period. Sorry. I don't even understand how. I just don't. It's the worst place that you can ever go. But anyway, so everybody's not going to go to the DMV to get an identification. And according to this bill, if the person says that they don't drive and they can't afford an ID, then you have to do some kind of affidavit again, and that would allow you to get a free ID from the DMV. Or you need to use your passport. So all of that. And what I thought also was interesting is now challengers will have an opportunity to examine any document concerning proof of identification of that person. So in years past, I know that only the election officials can actually handle a person's personal documents and whatnot, and the challenger can only state what their challenge is. They don't believe that person lives there in that district, in that ward. They don't believe that to be that person. And then, of course, you want to ask them for identification, but I don't know. They're talking about provisional ballots and whatnot. And this one here was very interesting. This part, if you are going to register to vote or you're going to vote through the mail, right? You need to attach a copy of your ID or submit the form or copy with one of the following documents: a bill, a bank statement, government check, paycheck, or any other government identifying document that shows your name and current address. Are you kidding? Do you know how many people are not going to vote if you tell me that, okay, you can vote, but you also have to make a photocopy, which means, let's say 8 out of 10 people who use their cell phones for everything aren't going to have printers because everything is already digital on the phone. You want them to actually go and print something, then attach it to the thing, and then, are you kidding? So yeah, no. Everybody's not going to vote. I can see that. In addition to providing the personal identification as may be required by paragraph 1, any person voting by mail-in, I just said all that, so that was just crazy. Also, the same requirement is if you have someone who is going to register to vote by mail. They have to provide a copy of documentation. Are you kidding? The bill statement in part says the bill will require voters to present certain documentation as proof. Voters, whether voting in person or through the mail, will be required to show and submit a copy of their New Jersey driving license. First-time voters, documentation will be required in addition to the production of any document necessary to fulfill the proof of ID. Anyway, in a nutshell, this is stupid. I don't agree. All these guys are out of their, well, I can't even talk to the committee because we don't know what the committee members' opinions are because the committee has not really discussed this in public as we expect them to. We also know that oftentimes bills will go to committee and they will die. And that's fair. That is fair. But at least let us know. Like, post a listing of what your bills are, what you plan to discuss. We have a right to know at the end of the day. So anyway, I did have my little open public meeting records document pulled up so I can share that with you on the screen, but I messed it up when I logged out of the meeting. So my bad. Anyway, this bill number 134, I oppose 100%. I oppose. But I do want to say that there is a Senate bill that I did see, S94, which was sponsored by a number of folks out of Essex County. We had Senator Nia Gill and Senator Ronald Rice, the top two sponsors. I didn't write down everybody else's name. Oh, yes, I did. Let me see. Nia Gill, Senator from District 34, Senator Ronald Rice, District 28, Senator Steve Sweeney, District 3, Senator Loretta Weinberg, District 37. And then there are a number of co-sponsors here. So in part, S94, which I do support, establishes the Democracy Act to modify various voter registration and voting procedures. And there is also a bill, I didn't write down a number, that they're proposing that we're going to allow for early voting in the state of New Jersey 15 days before the election. That's awesome. And it's not just, what we do now when you can go and you can submit your paper ballot. This is like real in-person voting with the machines, and it's 15 days before the election. So I applaud the legislators who are working on that, and I hope that that bill does not die in committee, or it doesn't end up like some of the ones I've been following that, they don't show up on the list. How ridiculous is that? So the open public meetings calls for any public body, right? They have to provide the date and the time and the purpose of their meeting. I know that if you watch the city council meeting, you'll hear the reading of the statement that this meeting was, according to the Open Public Meeting Records Act, this meeting was published in whatever newspaper, it was posted in the city website, so on and so forth, right? So we have the same expectations for our state legislatures. And to my chagrin, it's not an uncommon thing. And I know that, but it's not fair to the public. What happens, what they're doing is when you go to the state website, you get to go to a list of bills, right? For the schedule of the meeting. For example, if you were to go to the New Jersey Legislature website and you check the calendar, right, you will be able to see what committees are meeting that day. You would be able to see what their agendas or the list of bills were. And now, because everything is remote, you can actually watch the meetings. So, I mean, this is pretty awesome. I actually watch the meetings sometimes at lunchtime. I'll watch the ones from the morning if anything interests me. And then, just see from there. But like I said, it's a little frustrating when the list of bills is there, but they're not voting on them. They're not talking about them. So let me just show you what I'm talking about here. When you go to the homepage of the New Jersey Legislature and you go down to the calendar, right? So like this was yesterday. the committee that we're meeting are listed here. And then if you click on the committee, let's say these are the bills that are supposed to be here, right? You're going to look, you want to see this is what they're supposed to be talking about in this committee. So if anything changes, it's okay. According to the Open Public Meeting Records Act, if anything on the original agenda changes, let's say they add a bill, right? They don't have to re-advertise it. However, if you are going to put bills on and you're not going to talk about them, then that's a little suspicious, right? I don't understand what is that about? Like it's not fair to us in the general public. And I think that the New Jersey lawmakers need to get their act together. And if the bill is going to die, let it die. But for God's sake, if it shows up on a list, you need to be discussing it and taking action on it because it's there. Seriously. Okay. I'm off my rant on that. Let's talk about something else. We talked about the ones I support and the one I don't support. Now let's talk about another one that I support. This one is awesome. Let me just say to you that I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to, talk about evangelism, all of that. We want to talk about folks who have the right to protect their homes with their own firearms. We want to talk about folks who, for sport and for hunting, are legally possessing firearms. And I want to just say yay for the Assembly Bill number 163. And that was a Assembly bill. Now watch this. It's sponsored by the two Republicans in District 24, whose other bill I vehemently oppose, which is requiring voters to provide identification. So Assemblyman Worths and Assemblyman Space are the sponsors of this legislation. And bill number 163 is awesome. And the bill actually eliminates prohibition against purchasing more than one handgun in a calendar month. How about that? That's a good one, right? Listen, right now in America, folks are arming themselves, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, in some places, they are not as restrictive as New Jersey when it comes to, the Second Amendment right, the rights of individuals to openly carry or conceal and carry. We got to flip through hoops and whatnot. And I'll tell you this also, with the influx of all the new applications, I know for a fact, and I'm lying, I believe wholeheartedly that in communities where the population is primarily Negro or, Hispanic, those applications are being slowed down. And I'm going to give you an example, one that's true. My nephew actually lives in Maplewood. Sorry, I'm not going to tell you who he is, but he lives in Maplewood. So just think about Maplewood, and then you think about Newark. I know someone who applied at the same time for their firearms permit, one in Maplewood and one in Newark. They did the state process, which is so easy. It's all online and it's awesome. And they did their fingerprints. And the person in Maplewood received theirs weeks ago, actually probably almost 2 months ago now. And the person in Newark is still waiting. So again, in my opinion, there's a slowdown, which I don't think is fair at all. Nevertheless, if you can, you should get yourself a firearm permit, and you should look into the New Jersey gun laws and find out why New Jersey is so restrictive when other states are not. I said it many, many years ago that in some communities where the citizens are arming themselves, there's less crime. You know why? Because Joe knows that Johnny has a firearm and we are all going to behave accordingly. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, I do support 100% not limiting the number of firearms that a legal firearm owner, registered card carrier can have. So yay for that. I support it 100%. And kudos. This bill sits in the Law and Public Safety Committee. This committee has not published any meeting dates to date. We are watching that. I have subscribed to this bill so we can see how far it goes. The members of the committee, if you support this like I do, I just wanted to share the members of the committee. So if your legislator is a member of the committee, you might want to reach out to him or her and encourage them to support Bill number 163. Because slowly but surely, we the people, if we are asking and we are providing information, these people will do what we ask, right? And that is to, ease up on the gun legislation and stop making it so restrictive. Let me just say that guns don't kill people. People kill people, right? With guns sometimes. But the legal firearm owner is not the one out there in the street, running around shooting other people. They're protecting their property, their home. They're hunting, right? They're going for sport, things like that. So the Law and Public Safety Committee, let's see, you have Adam Talaferro, Democrat from Legislative District 3, Annette Chaparro, District 33, Linda Carter, District 22, Serena Damaso, District 13, Eric Peterson, District 23, Jean Stanfield, District 8, Shavonda Sumter, District 35, and Lisa Swain, District 38. These are the folks on the committee, so you might want to reach out to them, send them a message, let them know that you support this bill and other bills that would make your life easier if you chose to exercise your Second Amendment right, get a firearm. Okay, that's that. I want to just circle back to something also. When we talk about, I'll talk about it here because I want to talk about the last bill. And this bill, oh wait, this is the same one I was talking about before. Wait, the one we were talking about before was that one. Okay. I want to just circle back again to the voting bill. And I just have a couple of things that I should have said. I wanted to just say for the record so that everybody understands. In 2019, Governor Murphy signed a bill, A3456, S2100. This was allowing parolees and people on probation to vote. Let me tell you something. People who are on parole and probation, a lot of them don't have driving licenses. Their privileges may still be revoked for whatever their offense was and whatnot. So again, going to requiring all this nonsensical identification. Don't get me wrong. If you have someone who comes in and they can't spell their name, then of course you challenge that person and you ask them for ID. But if you have someone who comes in, their signature matches what's in the book, and 8 out of 10 times that person has voted before, and the poll worker is the same poll worker because they don't change too frequently, then, don't make them pull out ID. Don't make them go through the hoops and flip through the hoops because, these Republican gentlemen want that. That's all another way to minimize and limit the number of folks that are going to be voting. So I just wanted to make that clear. Like we're making strides, and then you have some folks here who want to just, circle back and go backwards, way, way backwards. So we're not going to do that. We don't want to do that. All right. That's all I have to say. So much. I don't know. Don't believe the hype. Cannabis is not legal. Don't listen to what the folks are telling you. that everybody's going to have an opportunity. I will believe that when I see that, because we don't even know how much it's going to cost if you want to become like a retailer. We don't know how much it's going to cost if you want to be a delivering service, besides the fact that you had to have gobs and gobs of insurance for your business. What are the license fees going to be? I know that there are going to be a limit of 37 cannabis establishments. That's what the bill says. But when you say establishments, what really does that mean? Are you saying only 37 retailers? Are you saying 37 is going to be a combination of growers, testers, wholesalers, all of that? Like that, it wasn't very clear. And that bill was 218 pages, and it was long. Some of it didn't make sense at all. Didn't even talk about cannabis. But, your girl, the truth teller, is here to do her research and get the information out to you. Thank you for watching the video, whoever you are. And I'll be here next week. What are we going to talk about next week? We'll see what the status is of the legalization of cannabis. I'm not going to stop talking about that, because I hate to say I told you, but I told you. They weren't ready. That's the reason why the legislature didn't vote on it themselves. That's why they confused everybody and sent them out here. So had you all to vote yes. And now you're sitting there trying to light a blunt. Now I'm going to tell you to be scared, because it's not legal. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not going to scare you. But anyway, don't forget to tell your legislatures to support A305. Make sure that A305 gets into the governor's office and he approves it. Again, those Karens and Peters out there who are making false accusations against folks for crimes, those penalties are being increased by this bill. So I do support that. All right. And let's make sure that we hold our legislators accountable. Let me tell you something. They work for us, okay? They work for you and I, and they need to make sure that they're publishing everything that is going to be on their agendas, and they're talking about what's on the list. If it's on the list, you should really be talking about it, right? Exactly. Okay, folks, that's it for me. Next week, we're going to talk about cannabis. We're going to circle back to the vaccine. I've done my research, but a lot of folks are going to be getting it, so maybe I can find someone who got it. Be safe. Go get your COVID tests regularly. And I will see you next week. Stay tuned. Good night.